Welcome everyone, the starving fire god, the epic of Khandava forest. Okay, let's dive into this.
Today we're opening up one of the most fascinating texts in human history, the Mahabharata. But listen, we aren't just looking at your standard run-of-the-mill battle between kings. Oh no, we're talking a story of absolute cosmic proportions. It's packed with bizarre divine problems, epic sacrifices, and literal elemental warfare. And it all kicks off at this massive central mystery in our source material. Think about this. Why does Agni, the almighty god of fire, this fundamental force of nature, who can literally consume anything, why does he need mortal help to burn down a forest? It's a total paradox, right? It just hooks you instantly. How does the actual embodiment of fire find himself so powerless that he has to go and beg humans for a favor? Well, to figure that out, we've got to look at how this whole crazy encounter begins.
The text gives us this absolutely brilliant opening scene. The legendary heroes Arjuna and Krishna, who's referred to here as Vasudeva, are just hanging out, relaxing near the Khandava forest. Out of nowhere, they get approached by a Brahmana, a priest. But this isn't just your average priest. The source describes him as voracious. He marches right up to these two incredibly powerful warriors and essentially says, "Look, I eat a lot, and I want you to feed me." It's such a strange, kind of comical demand to make of two guys who are just trying to rest. But Arjuna and Krishna, being honorable, they agree. They say, "Sure, what kind of food do you want?" And boom, that's when the disguise drops.
I absolutely love this direct quote from the source. "Know that I am Agni." The Brahmana reveals his true, terrifying, awe-inspiring identity. He is the fire god himself, and he definitely doesn't want some rice or fruit. No, he wants the kind of food that suits a deity of his massive, destructive magnitude. But if you read closely, there's this underlying desperation in his voice. He hasn't just bumped into them, he's cornered these two warriors specifically to get this food. So what exactly is this meal he's so desperate to get his hands on?
Well, the catch is that his desired meal is the Khandava forest itself. He wants to eat the whole thing, but there's a massive, celestial obstacle in his way. This forest is under the direct, personal protection of Indra, the king of the gods and the lord of rain and thunderstorms. And Indra isn't just protecting it for fun. His good friend, a super powerful Naga, or serpent, named Takshaka, lives right there with this family. So whenever Agni tries to eat this forest, literally the second he sparks a flame, Indra just opens up the heavens and dumps rain on him, completely dousing the fire. Poor Agni is stuck in this incredibly frustrating stalemate.
Now, this is where the explainer gets truly fascinating. In the source text, there's a king named Janamejaya who's actually listening to this story being told, and he interrupts the narrator to ask the exact same question we're all thinking right now. Why was Agni so incredibly desperate to burn this specific forest filled with living creatures? What on earth drove the mighty fire god to such a pathetic, starving state? To answer that, the text takes us on this massive flashback and introduces us to a deeply, deeply obsessed human monarch.
Enter King Swetaki. Guys, here is a man who literally doesn't know the meaning of the word stop. Swetaki absolutely loved performing religious sacrifices. And I mean loved. He performed them so continuously that the constant billowing smoke actually blinded his priests, leaving them physically weak. When they finally recover, or when he manages to replace them, Swetaki decides he wants to perform a sacrifice that lasts for 100 years. Naturally, the priests flat out refuse. They quit. Swetaki is furious. So to prove his devotion and force the gods to help him, he marches off to the mountains, stops eating, and literally stands still, like a tree trunk, with his arms raised in the air for 6 continuous months, just to get their attention.
You see, right before he stormed off to the mountains, his utterly exhausted, entirely frustrated priests had told him, probably mockingly or just out of sheer exasperation, "Look, if you want to do this so badly, go ask Rudra to help you." Rudra, of course, being Shiva, the god of destruction and asceticism. And Swetaki, being the absolute fanatic that he is, takes this advice completely literally. And shockingly, his 6 months of standing around like a tree actually works. Shiva appears before him, genuinely impressed by his sheer willpower, and agrees to help. But there is a major catch.
Shiva doesn't just hand over a favor for free. He gives Swetaki a seemingly impossible, agonizingly grueling test. First, Swetaki has to pour clarified butter, ghee, into a sacrificial fire. Next, he has to do this continuously, no breaks at all. And finally, he must maintain this while living a super strict ascetic lifestyle. Only if he pulls all this off will Shiva agree to officiate his massive sacrifice. Sounds pretty tough, right? But the real jaw-dropper is the duration Shiva attaches to this little condition.
12 years. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. For 12 straight years, this mortal king stood there pouring a continuous, never-ending stream of clarified butter right into the fire. It's an image of staggering, almost ridiculous mythological scale. Day and night, for over a decade, this fire is fed nothing but rich, heavy butter. And insanely enough, Swetaki actually pulls it off. He proves his unparalleled dedication.
True to his word, Shiva's incredibly impressed by this. Now, since gods don't typically officiate human sacrifices directly themselves, Shiva summons Durvasa. Durvasa is this exalted sage who's actually considered a portion of Shiva's own self, and he's sent down to go and assist Swetaki. The great sacrifice is finally performed, Swetaki is celebrated by everyone, and eventually he ascends to heaven, a completely victorious, fulfilled monarch. So Swetaki gets his happy ending, but while he's celebrating, someone else is left dealing with the severe physiological fallout of that 12-year butter marathon.
Now, what's really interesting here is the stark contrast. Normally, we think of Agni as this fearsome, blazing, powerful entity, but after King Swetaki's ritual, not so much. Remember the fire that Swetaki was pouring all that butter into for 12 solid years? That fire was Agni. Agni essentially drank a continuous river of pure, unadulterated fat for over a decade. The source text literally describes him as pale, totally having lost his color, entirely lacking energy, and suffering from a complete loss of appetite. The omnipotent fire god has a catastrophic case of cosmic indigestion. He is in a severe, divine food coma.
So desperate and feeling all his energy fading away, Agni goes straight to Brahman, the creator of the universe. He pleads his case, saying, "Even now I am suffering from surfeit, which I cannot dispel." Surfeit basically meaning a ridiculously excessive amount of something. The guy is literally sick from overeating, and he begs the creator to help him regain his blazing, permanent nature. He desperately needs a cure.
Brahma listens to the poor, sick fire god and delivers what plays out like a highly structured, almost clinical doctor's prescription. Step 1, go down to the Khandava forest. Step 2, burn it down to the ground and consume the fat of all the creatures living there, since they're enemies of the gods anyway. Step 3, this specific, fiery diet will cure your sickness and restore your blazing glory. It's a brutal, incredibly violent mythological remedy, but apparently the only way to cure a 12-year butter binge is a massive, raging forest fire.
So, armed with this advice, Agni eagerly rushes to the Khandava forest to take his medicine. But the second he sparks up, he hits a wall of impossible opposition. The creatures of the forest don't just sit around waiting to burn. The text describes this epic, wildly chaotic, elemental battle. Thousands of elephants use their trunks as literal fire hoses, frantically spraying water everywhere. Thousands of multi-hooded snakes are actually spitting water right onto the flames. And, above it all, Indra, fiercely protecting his friend Takshaka, unleashes absolute torrential rains from the clouds. It is the ultimate mythological firefighter squad.
And Agni doesn't just try this once. He tries repeatedly, 7 times. 7 separate times the god of fire blazes up, desperately trying to consume the forest to cure his agonizing sickness, and 7 times he is utterly, completely defeated, just extinguished by the combined aquatic efforts of the animals and the king of the gods. He's weak, he's sick, and he is entirely outmatched.
Which brings us right back to the beginning of our explainer, closing the loop perfectly. This is exactly why the voracious Brahmana approaches Arjuna and Krishna. Agni knows for a fact he cannot beat Indra and those forest creatures alone in his weakened state. He needs the 2 greatest mortal warriors on Earth. He literally begs them to use their unparalleled mastery of weapons to create a physical umbrella of arrows to block Indra's rain, and to secure the perimeter so absolutely no creatures can escape while he finally eats his prescribed meal. Boom! The mystery of the starving fire god is solved.
But as this one piece of the story resolves, it leaves us staring down an even bigger, crazier conflict. Arjuna and Krishna have agreed to help, but really think about what that actually means. This entire sequence is an absolute masterclass in how ancient epics use these absurd, cosmic scales to explore very human themes of nature, divine fallibility, and sheer, stubborn dedication. But here's the real question. Can 2 mortals, no matter how skilled they are, truly take on the king of the gods, thousands of desperate animals, and the wrath of the heavens itself, all just to feed a starving fire? It's a showdown that challenges the very hierarchy of the cosmos. Keep that question in mind as you explore more of this source material, because the battle that follows is unlike anything else in mythology. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.